This is currently on the table. Council Bill 1, 2020, introduced by Liz Walsh. An act altering the number of consecutive years a project or phase of a project must be retested if it fails one or more components of the school capacity test of the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance.
I move to remove Council Bill 1-2020 from the table.
Second.
Ms. Schwartz-Jones, can you please call the vote to remove Council Bill 1-2020 from the table?
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rigby,
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
Was that a? Okay. And Mr. Youngman?
Yes.
I move to approve Amendment 1 to Council Bill, I move to approve Amendment 1 to Council Bill 1-20. Or do we need to move those from the table too?
Well, the motion to remove Council Bill 1-2020 from the table passes. And Council Bill 1-2020 is removed from the table. So,
This might be a Gary question, but I think we withdrew the amendments so that way they could just be moved normal.
You did.
Okay. Okay, I'm just confused by the last line on page 16 of the script.
I move to approve Amendment Council Bill 1-2020.
You
Should
did
be-
it correct. Sorry.
Should be Amendment 1 to Council Bill 1-2020.
Right. This has already been moved and seconded. What was withdrawn was amendment number 1, and so Ms. Walsh now moved again to introduce, which was the correct motion, to introduce amendment 1, to approve amendment 1 to Council Bill 1-2020. I think I left the amendment off, though. Amendment number, that would be number 1. I see why it's confusing.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
Ms. Walsh, do you want to explain that amendment?
Madam Chair, it needs a second, and then the
Oh, I'm
body
sorry.
can discuss
Second.
it. It's all right.
Now me?
Yep.
Now you.
Yes.
Amendment number 1 is one of the compromise amendments, one of 3 actually that was proposed in the last legislative session. And this one applies the what is requested in the original language of the bill, which is a move from a 4-year to a 7-year waiting period only in those cases where a receiving school is 5% or more above this set thresholds now.
Amendment number 1 to Council Bill 1-20 was moved by Councilmember Walsh, and I seconded it. Is there any discussion on Amendment 1 to Council Bill 1-2020? No questions, no discussion. I move to approve Amendment 1 to Council Bill 1-2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so
Call the vote for that?
I'm working my way towards that. I apologize. I've just got to catch up because that's not happening. So, just to recap, that the Amendment 1 has been moved and seconded, and Madam Chair, are you calling for the vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Calling for the vote on Amendment 1.
On Amendment 1. Okay, Ms. Young?
I thought,
I think
No,
that was...
it wasn't moved in.
The amendment...
No.
1 to Amendment 1 was David Youngman's amendment.
And he did not move it. He just, okay. All right, so we're calling the vote only on Amendment 1. Ms. Young?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
No.
I'm sorry?
He said no.
He said no, okay. Ms. Rigby?
No.
Okay, Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Youngman?
No.
Okay, Amendment 1 to Council Bill 1 fails.
Right.
I move Amendment 2 to Council Bill 120. I move to approve Amendment 2 to Council Bill 120.
Second.
This amendment, again, in a compromise after a public hearing and last month's legislative session, amended the bill so as not to extend the waiting period to 7 years, but rather to 6 times. A project building into overcrowded schools would be retested.
Is there any discussion on Amendment 2 to Council Bill 1-2020? No discussion. So, Ms. Schwartz-Jones, can you call the vote on Amendment 2 to Council Bill 1-2020?
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Rigby?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Youngman?
No.
Amendment 2 to Council Bill 1-2020 fails. Amendment
Move
3.
to approve Amendment number 3 to Council Bill 1-2020.
Second.
This is your last chance, my fellow colleagues in the council, to approve a change to the APFO legislation as it applies now. The uniform testimony that we heard over however many months that this was pending as CB 17 last year and CB1 this year was that this measure, which is intended to be a fail-safe, has in fact failed. And we are not directing new construction to where we have, or new building home construction to where we have the capacity to school the children that will result. Amendment 3, again, as a compromise after months of public hearings, was proposed, and that would add merely an additional year to the current waiting period. The so-called 4 years would be extended to 5.
Is there any discussion on Amendment 3 to Council Bill 1-2020? No discussion? Ms. Schwartz-Jones, can you please call the vote on Amendment 3?
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Rigby?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Youngman?
No.
Amendment 3 to Council Bill 1-2020 fails.
I don't believe given, no, all right, I'll move amendment number 4 in, I move to approve amendment number 4 to Council Bill 1-2020.
Second.
Final amendment we actually just filed last week, and it was aimed at addressing those projects that are already in the school bin. You may recall from last year's discussion of CR 98 and 99, which is the allocation chart and the open closed school waiting bins. Department of Planning and Zoning provided during one of our work sessions a sheet of paper that identified what projects were still in the waiting bin and then identified them by how many years they'd been there. And the 3 projects, the 3 biggest projects that will come out of the open closed school waiting bin later this year when we do the annual allocation and school bin analysis, all are in the Tiber-Hudson watershed. Some of them as big as 8+ acres, the smallest just under 1. And so at the advice of council and our legislative analysts, we made an explicit amendment to propose Bill CB1 to say those projects in the hopper now should wait another year. That's Amendment 4.
Is there any discussion on Amendment number 4? Questions? No. Ms. Schwartz-Jones, can you call the vote on Amendment number 4 to Council Bill 1-20?
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Rigby?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Youngman?
No.
Amendment 4 to Council Bill 1-2020 fails. Is there any discussion on Council Bill 1-2020 as not recommended? Any discussion? Ms. Schwartz-Jones, can you please call the vote on Council Bill 1-2020?
Ms. Young?
I vote yes on Council Bill 1-2020. I think that this bill needs to be passed now. By 2022, according to the public school system, our high school capacity will have reached 110% district-wide. We have redistricted, and that has meant some developments can move forward, which is a good thing for those developments that can move forward. And the school district has been taking a look at this very closely to open up the schools where they can. But by 2022, there's no more schools to open up. We will be over capacity. If there is school capacity, then it's appropriate to have development. But when there is no school capacity, we need to slow down the process so we can ensure that there are schools available for our students. Otherwise, the community pays the price. Jurisdictions all over this area have longer wait periods than Howard County. Anne Arundel, 6 years. Calvert County, 7. Frederick, 5. Hartford and Baltimore counties are unlimited if the schools are over capacity. And Montgomery County puts a moratorium on their schools if the schools are over 120%. We know that people move to houses in Howard County because of the schools. And we need to continue to do everything we can to make sure that the reputation of our schools is maintained. The real economic driver in Howard County is our schools. And as a county council, we need to do everything we can to ensure their success. And that means not overcrowding our schools.
Okay, Dr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Rigby?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
I vote yes. I think the single most important piece of testimony that we heard about this bill actually wasn't submitted in support of this bill, but rather CR 14, the allocation bill. And that was when Mr. Jeff Brownell from Department of Planning and Zoning came and explained to us the history of the allocations and how that process has worked over time, most recently in the last, let's say, 15 years. By law, the purpose of those allocations is to provide an orderly and predictable planning environment for schools and other public facilities. No one here tonight thinks that anything approximating orderly or predictable planning has occurred by our system, by our county. We haven't planned for it at DPZ. We haven't planned for it at the school systems. I've said this over and over again for so many pieces of legislation. This is the part that we control as a council. We don't hold the purse strings. We can't allocate where those funds will be spent. I've seen all kinds of traffic over social media in the last week about how and where the school's capital budget funding will be. Guess what? It's not anywhere where these schools are the most overcrowded. If we aren't going to invest where the overcapacity schools are, then we shouldn't be shoving more homes into the neighborhoods that feed into those schools. I mean, we've had 3 work sessions on this. If you count the allocations one, don't even get into CB17 last year and the 2 bills that Jen Terrassa tried in her tenure on the council before we were here. It is an obvious fix to an obvious problem. I simplified it. I compromised it as much as I possibly could. And I am incredulous that I could not find common ground with at least one more of you. My vote is yes.
And Mr. Youngman? He's in, wait till you're muted. Okay, Mr. Youngman?
Sorry, I know I've been unmuting myself, Diane. I vote no.
Council Bill 1-2020 fails. Council Bill 9-2020.
9-2020, ZRA 188, introduced by the chairperson at the request of Glen Elk Country School, amending the Howard County zoning regulations pertaining to conditional uses to allow the hearing authority